value, labor, money, commodities, goods intended for exchange. Use value, chair, you can sit on it. And exchange value, chair, equals 100 eggs. Equals 2 sheets of linen. To be a commodity is a social property of things. Use value constitutes its material content. Natural form of the chair is simply its material composition. Social form is it being a commodity. If exchange is a standard form of transfer of goods, individual relations of exchange have to match each other. Regularity of exchange. Relations of exchange can only be stable when they generally exclude the possibility that profit and loss results merely through a particular sequence of exchange acts. Chair is equal to linen sheets and 100 eggs. What do they have in common? They have the same value. We are approximately aware of it, so we say cheaper or more expensive if it diverges in actual exchange. But what constitutes value, and how can it be determined? Utility theory of value. Value of something is determined by its usefulness. Problem. Water is much less valued than diamonds but much more useful. Labor theory of value. Quantity of labor necessary to produce something constitutes its value. Objections. Things are also exchanged that are not products of labor, like virgin soil. Price has to be explained separately. Certain products of labor, like works of art, have an exchange value that is completely independent of labor time expended for their production. As objectifications of equal human labor, commodities are values. Their quantity is determined by labor as value-forming substance which is not labor time individually expanded by isolated producers. A slow carpenter's chair isn't more valuable, but socially necessary labor time required to produce any use value under conditions of production normal for a given society, and with average degree of skill and intensity of labor prevalent in that society, which does not remain constant. Division of labor is a precondition for exchange. Services can also be exchanged. Become commodities. Material products are first produced and subsequently consumed. In case of services, production is concurrent with consumption. Distinction is that of material content, not social form. Adam Smith ascribes value directly to the rational considerations of isolated individuals. Labor entails effort. We therefore estimate value on the basis of how much effort is involved in production. Neoclassical economists take utility maximizing. Individual estimating utility as point of departure. They project onto individuals the features of society they wish to explain, making them universally human, like human propensity to exchange. For Marx, society does not consist of individuals, but expresses a sum of relationships and conditions in which these individuals stand to one another. These relations impose certain forms of rationality to which all individuals must adhere if they wish to maintain their existence within these relations, whose constant reproduction leads to naturalization of such behavior. Marx seeks to uncover a specific social structure that individuals must conform to regardless of what they think, for they know not what they do. Marx sees individual exchange relations as part of a particular social totality. Natural laws cannot be abolished. The only thing that can change under historically differing conditions is the form in which those laws assert themselves. That form in a state of society in which interconnection of social labor expresses itself as private exchange of individual products of labor is, precisely, the exchange value of these products. Under the conditions of commodity production, the distribution of privately expended labor onto individual branches of production is mediated by the value of commodities. Not conscious regulation, nor distribution predetermined by tradition. Twofold nature of the labor contained in commodities: concrete labor and abstract labor. Use value and value. Qualitatively different concrete labor produces qualitatively different use value. Every act of labor whose product is exchange produces value. As values, commodities are qualitatively equal. Qualitative equality of human labor. Carpentry produces value precisely as labor abstracted from its concrete manifestation as carpentry. Value-producing labor is abstract labor. the substance of value. It is frequently understood in a quasi-physical manner. Marx also obscures the matter by speaking sometimes of abstract labor as an expenditure of human labor power in the physiological sense. That kind of reduction is, however, an abstraction to which any kind of labor could be subjected regardless of whether it produces a commodity. This formulation suggests that abstract labor has a non-social natural foundation which provoked naturalistic interpretations of it in spite of Marx also calling value objectivity a spectral objectivity, a purely fantastic objectivity. Abstract labor is not visible just like the concept of a tree is not visible. But in case of abstract labor we are not dealing with mental, but with real abstraction. One which is carried out in the actual behavior of humans. During acts of exchange, abstraction is made of use value of commodities that are equated as values. An abstraction from the particularity of the labor that produces them actually occurs. Abstract labor cannot be measured in terms of hours of a concrete labor by a particular individual. It is a relation of social validation that is constituted in exchange, in which concrete acts of expended labor count as a particular quantum of value constituting abstract labor, and therefore an element of total labor of society. Only labor necessary for production of a use value under average conditions counts as value constituting. It changes constantly and only becomes apparent in the act of exchange when the individual producer finds out to what extent his individually expended labor time corresponds to socially necessary labor time. In traditional Marxism, a technologically determined socially necessary labor time was usually understood as the sole determinant of value constituting labor. However, Marx noted that in order to produce a commodity one has to produce use values for others. Only labor time expended under the average existing conditions of production as well as for the satisfaction of monetary social demand constitutes value. This satisfaction depends on the amount of this demand and the volume of production of other producers, both of which become apparent in the act of exchange. Individual acts of labor expenditure are not only distinguished from each other in their concrete character, but also in regard to qualifications of required labor power. Simple labor power and skill labor qualifications play a role in quantitative relation. What counts as simple labor power varies historically, geographically, culturally, but remains firmly established within a particular country at a particular point in time. Also decisive are the reflected processes of social hierarchization. Outside of their relationships with each other, in which they are equalized, neither code nor linen posses value objectivity. Value, a property that only exists within a relationship, appears to be an objective property that is also inherent outside of this relationship, but if we attempt to locate it, it eludes our grasp. In traditional Marxism, substance of value was understood as a property of an individual commodity believed to be determined independent of exchange process. Conceptions that emphasized importance of exchange were accused of advancing a circulation theory of value, overemphasizing a supposedly negligible aspect. Magnitude of value is a relationship between the individual labor of producers and total labor of society. Exchange does not produce value, but rather mediates this relation to total labor of society. In a society based on private production, this act of mediation can only occur in the act of exchange. Commodities have a common value form, which strikingly contrasts with the forms of their use values. That is a money form. We have to perform a conceptual reconstruction of connection between the simple form of value, that is, commodity expressing its value through another commodity, and the money form. Marx begins the analysis of the value form with the examination of the simple, isolated or accidental form of value. This is the expression of a commodity's value in another. That is, X commodity A equals Y commodity B. In Marx's favorite example, 20 yards of linen equals 1 coat. Value of A is expressed. B serves as means of expressing the value of A. A is relative value. B serves as an equivalent for value of A. This way only the value of one commodity can be expressed at a given time, but it implies the reversed expression. Second commodity counts in its manifestation as use value as a direct embodiment of value. Value of A only acquires objective form because it assumes the form of B. it becomes tangible, visible, measurable. This relation is a surface representation of the internal opposition between use value and value, hidden within the commodity. Value expresses the equal social validity of two completely different concrete acts of labor. It is a social relationship. If we consider value relationship of commodity A to all other commodities, we obtain total or expanded form of value. That is, XA equals YB, XA equals CC, XA equals ND, and so on. Value is now expressed in a simple and unified form. A single commodity, a general equivalent, serves as an expression of value for all the others, bringing them really into relationship with each other as values. Value and magnitude of value can now be expressed so that it seems as if they were simple properties of general commodities. Equivalent form is coalesced by social custom with the specific natural form of a particular commodity, which becomes the money commodity, distinguishing money form from general form of value. The commodity owner would like to treat his own commodity like a general equivalent that can be directly exchanged for all other commodities, but so does every other commodity owner. Only the action of a society can turn a particular commodity into the universal equivalent, a particular commodity in which all others have their values represented. Money. Commodity owners, acting before thinking, reproduce these conditions throughout their activity, as personifications of economic categories. Their activity necessarily results in creation of money. Their activity necessarily results in creation of money. In distinction to classical labor theory of value and neoclassical marginal utility theory, Marx's theory is a monetary theory of value. The usual Marxist value theory, alleging that value is already completely being mined by socially necessary labor time, is also a pre-monetary value theory. Marx's theory of value is not only a monetary theory of value, but it is a theory of value only insofar as it is a theory of capital. Since value acquires stability only through its movement as capital, Marx distinguishes between three fundamental functions of money that arise from simple circulation of commodities and money. There are additional ones. Function number 1. Money serves as the general measure of value. The value of every commodity is expressed as a specific quantity of money. On the basis of commodity production, labor becomes social labor only as a result of universal alienation of individual kinds of labor. The expression of value of commodity in money terms is its price. Money serves as an imaginary ideal capacity. Not every price change is the expression of a specific magnitude of value change, but reverses the case. Things that are not products of abstract labor can also have a price, like noble titles or stock options. The simultaneous change in the price of all commodities generally does not indicate change in all magnitudes of value, but rather a change in the value of money. Function number 2. Money is a means of circulation which mediates the actual exchange of commodities. Commodity. Money. Commodity. Metamorphosis of commodity, the material substance of which is the substitution of one used value by another of the same value. Merely symbolic money is sufficient for circulation. Function number 3. Money is an independent embodiment of value, a unity of magnitude of value and means of circulation. A material symbol of physical wealth. It functions as a hoard, as an independent manifestation of value outside the process of circulation. Every commodity producer, in order not to postpone his own purchases until his commodities are sold, or in order to ensure against failure to sell a commodity, is dependent on a smaller or greater hoard of money. In its function as a means of payment, money also acts as an independent manifestation of value. If a commodity is not paid for at the moment of purchase but later, then the buyer becomes a debtor, and the seller becomes a creditor. Money functions here as means of payment that concludes a purchase that already happened. Finally, money functions as world money on the world market, used as means of circulation in order to mediate a sale, as means of payment for concluding a sale, or as the universally recognized social materialization of wealth when not used for sale of payment, but to transfer wealth from one country to another. In Das Kapital, Marx said money always has to be linked to a particular commodity like gold. At the end of World War II, gold standard was still internationally accepted, but only the US dollar was covered by gold. Other currencies had exchange rates fixed to the dollar. State central banks had to honor dollars in gold. At the end of 1960s, it was clear that massive amount of dollars in circulation has rendered dollar-gold coupling a fiction, so at the beginning of 1970s the gold standard and fixed currency exchange rates were officially abolished. Now money is essentially paper money issued by state central banks. There is nothing for which this paper money can be redeemed. Gold is just another commodity like silver or iron. That the general equivalent must be a specific commodity was not proven by Marx, merely assumed. It is often the case that commodity fetish is characterized solely as a state of affairs in which social relationships between people appear as social relationships between things, so that social relationships become property of things. Fetishism would therefore be a form of false consciousness that should disappear once the real conditions concealed by it are explained. That reductionist conception hides important points of Marx's analysis. A commodity appears at first sight an extremely obvious trivial thing. But its analysis brings about that it is a very strange thing, abounding in metaphysical subtleties and theological niceties. To our everyday perception, a table is above all a particular use value, as a commodity also has a particular value. The sensuous extrasensory character of the commodity is first made clear by analysis, which shows that value objectivity cannot be expressed within the commodity itself but only in another commodity. That acts as a direct embodiment of value. Substance of value, that is, abstract labor, is just as elusive as the objectivity of value. The commodity reflects the social characteristics of man's own labor as objective characteristics of the products of labor themselves, as the socio-natural properties of these things. For people in a commodity-producing society, it seems as if things in a social context automatically possess value, and therefore automatically follow their own objective laws to which humans must submit. I call this fetishism, which attaches itself to products of labor as soon as they are produced as commodities, and is therefore inseparable from the production of commodities. Under conditions of commodity production, producers do not relate to each other in a direct social way, but through products of their labor. Appearance of a social relationship between things is not an illusion. To those engaged in exchange, social relations appear as what they are. Material thingly or thing-like relations between persons and social relations between things. What is wrong here is the assumption that things possess these social characteristics automatically as a self-evident, nature-imposed necessity. Commodity values are objective expression of a social connection produced by humans, but not transparent to them. By equating their different products to each other in exchange as values, they equate their different kinds of labor as human labor. They do this without being aware of it. Whether my individually expanded labor is recognized as component of total labor of society, and to what degree is provided by value of my commodity in exchange. Magnitudes of commodity values vary continuously, independently of the will for knowledge, actions of people doing the exchange. Their own movement within society has the form of a movement made by things which, far from being under their control, in fact control them. Decisive relations of domination are objective. This impersonal submission to inherent necessities exists only because people relate to things in a particular way, as commodities. For spontaneous consciousness, forms which stamp products as commodities possess the fixed quality of natural forms of social life. Classical political economy labors under the delusion of these forms as well. This delusion is itself based upon a specific objectivity and therefore has a certain necessity. The various schools of political economy do not engage in debate concerning form determinations of that subject matter, but rather content of these form determinations. Marx criticizes these presupposed forms. Rule of value over humans is a result of their specific behavior, which can in principle change. Commodities find their own value configuration ready to hand in the form of a physical commodity existing outside but also alongside them. The movement through which this process has been mediated vanished in its own result. Whereas commodities are useful objects that additionally have the objective status of being values, money is directly a value thing. It is as if in addition to lions, tigers and hares the animal would also exist. An individual incarnation of the entire kingdom. The abstract category is placed at the same level as the individuals from which the category is derived. Money is the real existence of this absurdity. If the intentions of social actors are made the point of departure of analysis, then that which individuals don't know, the framework that preconditions their thought and activity, is blanked out of the analysis from the very start. Proceeding from this, not only can we criticize a large portion of the foundations of bourgeois economics and sociology, but also a popular argument of worldview Marxism that there exists a social subject which, on the basis of its particular position in bourgeois society, possesses a special ability to see through social relationships. Workers, just like capitalists in their spontaneous consciousness, are also subject to the delusions of the commodity fetish.